You were perhaps the first person or one among the early who was very vocal. It has got more to do with your family, because this author whom I'm referring to has not only maligned your family but has betrayed your trust. Because when your family shared some of the facts which are privy with in good trust, of course, later that author went and he went berserk and he exploited this trust in a big way. What is the current status of this tussle, and more generally, how worthy is that book to read, which has come out with such kind of convoluted background?
Honestly, it's not like a tussle anymore. The reason why I brought out the fact that our trust was misused is for other artists to be cognizant of something which might potentially could have happened. For example, because of this, if some other artist family are able to be a bit more careful in sharing their information, then the purpose is achieved. That's all. I didn't want to expose anyone. Personally, I have nothing against anyone, and why should I have anything against anyone? That's none of my business, right? It is my business, given the fact that whatever was said, the tone and the tenor was used as a narrative, which was not the case. Now, about the book, there is an I see it in two ways. There is one amazing aspect of the book, and there is one aspect of the book which I don't even consider worthy of being called a book. The amazing aspect of the book are the middle chapters, which actually talks about how a Mridangam is made, right? The factual part of how a Mridanga, how the wood is chosen, how the wood is grinded, how the hollowness is made, then how it is made to, get how it is made to, soak the moisture, and how the skin is taken off, how the war is being made, how the motor is being made, how the right side and the left side balance is made, and how things are made. That is an amazing piece of writing. Forget Mridangas. I would strongly urge every musician to possess a book for how beautifully it has been written. It's as pellucid as it can get with respect to how to present a process oriented information. So that way, hats off to the book. The middle chapters are an absolute necessity for every musician to possess. Now, the other part of it, which is a narrative around what happened, how happened. I mean, it starts off by saying, by creating a cloud that people from marginalized section of a different faith system were actually being almost exploited here. Now, if you are marginalized in a different faith system, why not that faith system give them enough, livelihood opportunities, right? Now, that is not being spoken much. And then you talk about exploitation here. And now, I have done a lot of primary service. I have been a researcher, I've been a ground researcher, I have done fundamental research too. My question is, how can somebody consider the validity of this book? Because it's not even a scientific survey, right? I mean, in fact, in the entire world, there are only 4 or 5 institutions which offer a terminal degree in survey construction. Imagine that. You talk to 4 or 5 people and you just come up with an inference and you say that, you know what, this is what it is, there is. Now, I'm not saying, therefore, the inference of the book is not valid. I'm not saying it is not scientific enough. I mean, there's so much of surveyor bias, there is so much of respondent bias, there is no triangulation at all, there is absolutely no questionnaire. It's an informal interview boss. I mean, if I stay with you for like 15 days, right? Don't I know how to gather the information the way I want, and how I have to ask the question so that you answer the way that I should, right? So I mean, I am a behavioral economist. So if I see this, it is so amply clear that there's absolutely no scientific reason to believe the validity of the results of what the book says is. The funniest thing is the people who have lauded this book are some Nobel laureates who have been followers of this music from Harvard, whom I know, right? And they are experts in survey design and they are experts in behavioral economics. But the ecosystem is like so strong that they wouldn't want to actually, I mean, if it was a journal article, the same Nobel laureates would have, I mean, forget the Nobel laureates, even like a tier 3 academic institute would have just like trashed it. I mean, there's absolutely nothing scientific in it. I mean, these people call themselves rationalists. So, boss, give me some kind of a scientific method to explain how you came up with the results. How did you get this information? What was your survey method? What was your instrument? What was your pilot? Absolutely nothing. And now you say that there is some kind of, and somewhere in the book it says that Pioneer Subramania Pillai was not even allowed to dream. Well, he was, I mean, it could be figurative, but the way it was written was as if like Pioneer Subramania Pillai and the author was like they were childhood friends, right? And that is one thing. I mean, Pioneer Subramania Pillai died like 10 years before the author was even born. And the other reference to Muruga Bhupati, if Pillai could not even dream, it was a crime for Muruga Bhupati to dream or something like that. I'm just giving you a context. For someone who made a slightly slanting remark on my grandfather, Muruga Bhupati sir, he engaged in a physical brawl, saying that how dare you talk about someone like Palghat Mani Iyer. This is the kind of mutual respect they three had amongst themselves. And here is an author who is talking about who is great and who is not because of what. I mean, like, where does these things come from? I have absolutely no idea. And this gets back to the other two questions that you asked about affiliation to this intellectualism, right? So when you talk about this kind of, I mean, I'm wearing a behavioral economist hat, and I'm telling you, you will see a lot of people, especially youngsters, really buying into this idea of intellectualism, right? And a lot of social media posts. One thing is fine, like these teens getting, carried away by all these fancy stuff, by this explosion and all this stuff is fine. But artists who are reasonably well known, okay, who have visibility, they are getting into what is called PDA, which is not public display of affection, but public display of affiliation. Okay, so in behavioral economics, we say that this sends a signal to the ecosystem saying that I belong to this. So you take care of me. You don't directly say that. You don't call them and say that you take care of me. But these are signals to provide them, and mainly it comes out of a source of insecurity, right? You don't trust in yourself. You don't trust in your practice. Why should you do that? Well, you may subscribe to it, but time and again showing that this is my affiliation, this is my affiliation. I've gone with this person for a drink. I've gone with this person to this park. The seven of us were in the beach this morning. This morning we were playing cricket. You're a musician. You put posts about your practice, say what worked, what did not work. Occasionally you post, yeah, I saw Roger Federer, now I'm taking a selfie, great. Occasionally once in 2 weeks you say that I made this sundal, it didn't come out well or it came out great. All that is fine. But time and again, every 1 or 2 days, either you or your friends put in your picture wherein like you show your affiliation to a specific group and say that opportunities, concerts, money, network, I'm here. Okay, I belong to this group. this kind of this sense of insecurity and this sense of lack of confidence in oneself, this kind of groupism is what I call this public display of affinity on affiliation is something which is directly connected to whatever I talked about, the survey stuff. So these two are highly interlinked. So the people who call themselves intellectuals, who don't employ an intellectual way of actually coming up with the results, and people subscribing to that because of lack of security.
Also, if you look at the composition of the crowd that comes to concerts which are filled with all these kinds of experimentations, others, you will clearly notice that about 30 to 40%, I'm not exaggerating, 30 to 40% of the crowd comes not for the music but for the ideology. That's why you will always see that in most of the social media platforms and also on YouTube, for such interviews with such artists, the comments will be about 90% from people who might not have any knowledge of concerts. Probably they might not even have attended such concerts. But the comments would be for the ideology part. So that's some concerning trend.
So this is how it works.
I mean, I'm amazed at the similarity of thoughts when it comes from a behavioral economist and what we in the science call it as. There is this was given by Carl Sagan, who was an astronomer, very famous astronomer, and who has had a lot of communication. He said he has devised a kit to detect balloonies. And when you say about PDA, it reminded me of how he said how to detect an idiot when he's subscribing to authority. So sheer subscription to authority without exhibiting or living by what your performance is or what you have bringing to the table, just by merely saying I am affiliated to such and such, in a very sophisticated, in a very subtle way, is actually ending up exposing the idiocy.
I'm not even talking about these teens who can get swayed away by these kinds of fancy things like fancy Instagram posts and all that stuff. I'm talking about musicians who have visibility and who are really good in what they are doing. Still, they
Correct.
want to publicly display their kind of affiliation as something which is like totally unnecessary. Why do you have to signal that? I mean, just rely on your music.
That is why, because you ultimately psychoanalyzed it to their inherent latent insecurity. It is somewhere they do not have the confidence in that, and that's why they had to actually subscribe to this affiliation. And that is where, in words of Carl Sagan, it says you are in a way kind of becoming subservient to the authority, because by doing so, the artist feels that others will get taken away by this so-called authoritative figure or this affiliation. But that makes me ask you a very pertinent and very pointed question, which concerns you. That you have been one of the very few artists who openly took a stance against the decision of Saṅgīta Kalanidhi. It was conferred to a specific artist in the last 2024 May. So many artists, like or unlike you, wanted to be vocal about it, but were reluctant. It was because of their insecurity or because of their fear of losing the wherewithal or subsistence, whatever it is. My question is, do you think mass resistance by taking such postures would be effective, or the grounds are already seeded? Do the stakeholders necessarily have any responsibility in it at all? What are your takes?
See, we asked for a clarification of what the selection process was for the Secretary elect of 2024. So, because I mean, we had solid evidences of the Saṅgīta elect, making maligning comments on past artists, as well as making derogatory remarks against certain systems which are the building blocks of Carnatic music. So we never got a clarification. Our family did not get a clarification. So that's what we watched out. We didn't get a response at all. Like what was the selection criteria that went into it? Because when the press announcement came, it said that the elect had other credentials. But when they personally, came out, they said that it's purely for music. So there were a lot of confusion on that. Still now it's not sorted. That's different. That being said, as I said before, stakeholders do have a keen sense of responsibility, I would think. If we talk about each artist, I give this example. Okay, I want to talk about the responsibility of the artist, of the organizers, and the rasikas. Let's say I'll start with rasikas. Let's say you know for a fact that you have your food from several restaurants, and in one of the restaurants you have perfect information that the owner of the restaurant has been exploiting people in his or her restaurant to get work done. And he is employing methods which may not be socially suitable or aligning to your mentality to prepare the food. But the food is amazing, is what you think it is. Right? Now, when you have this kind of conflict going in, what would be a responsible choice for you? Would you still go for it? Or would you probably continue yourself with the other 6 or 7 restaurants you usually go with? Very simple, right? Now, when the restaurant owner says that, you know what, Annalakshmi is someone who has to be like wiped out of this earth. Let's say that's a statement he or she makes. Would you still want to go to that restaurant and have your food? That we can just superimpose on what has happened in the music field. For those who say, I care only about music, I don't care about ideology. Right? That doesn't fit well at all. And it gets back to the India Pakistan thing. Right? It doesn't strike a chord at all. Now, when it comes to organizers, let's say there is a person who is constantly involved in some kind of a bickering with passers-by. Let's say he's having this tea in his tea stall, and every evening at 5 p.m., his only job is to, you know, just catch a quarrel with someone. Or let's say he teases the woman who passes by. Now the question is, as a tea stall owner, would you care only about the fact that, you know what, my dealing is, I give him tea, he gives me money. Whatever he is, I don't care. I'm not saying that is wrong. That is one kind of behavior. The other behavior is, why do I have to engage with this kind of a person? Okay. So that is another kind of behavior. It's for people to choose. That is about the organizers. Something similar for artists. I think I alluded to this fact before, but I don't talk about his behavior. He doesn't talk about my behavior. Again, whether this is right or wrong is not what I'm saying. There are these choices which is available. People have to decide what is a more responsible choice. Every time you remain silent, we have had evidences in the past of how our culture has been denigrated because of merely being silent spectators. Right? It's pretty costly. And tomorrow, when you have your kids who are at a very risky age of 11 or 12, these days that's the risky age, right? 11 or 12. And that is when you start realizing, oh, what kind of things are we exposing our kids to? That's when you start realizing what you subscribe to and what you don't subscribe to. Until then, until you are like 35 or 36, this will be like a great thing to follow and all that stuff. Once you have a family, once you have kids, people start reversing. Even those who get affiliated to this kind of an ideology. I have like who have strongly been like supportive of such kind of ideologies, and once they were 35 or 36 or 37 or 38, once their kids entered like 11 or 12 or the early teens, is when they started getting really scared of what they are getting their kids exposed to. And that's when once, when you are 37 or 38, slowly you are expected to get some brains and all that stuff, right? With experience. So that is when things start to revert back. So this is what it is. And that's probably why those ideologies don't subscribe to family values. So as long as you're single and as long as you don't have responsibilities, right, that gets back to the bigger picture of why such rationalists don't believe in families, don't believe in any kind of affiliation or commitment and all that stuff. That's my opinion.
Last year in YouTube, there became a very big viral video when a young girl posted a small reel dancing Bharatanatyam but in a swimsuit. So it talks about what is a dress code that is needed for a performer today.
It's definitely a liberty. But imagine the same people who argue in quotes for the side of rationalists, why do they continue to wear the uniform of court, which is like black suit and white shirt? Why is that? The selectivity here. It's not the question of whether you want to exercise your choice. Then exercise your choice everywhere. You should only employ lawyers. I mean, the same kind of artists who believe in all these kinds of freedom, they employed lawyers for certain cases. Okay, that happened quite recently. If those set of artists came and said, I will employ only those lawyers who are against dress code and who go casually to the court, only they should argue for me, then that shows some kind of consistency in your ideology. This is not idea. This is like in Tamil they say vetti pitch.
Wokeism has actually no bounds, and I'm only reminded of a conference in which two keynote speakers dressed up for giving the keynote address in reducing carbon footprint conference, demanding separate vehicle to the venue despite staying in the same residence.
But I want to talk about a chat GPT question that I asked, and it gave like a toolkit for what's been happening in the last 10 years for secularizing Carnatic music. So in chat GPT, the question that I asked was how to propagate Carnatic music without bhakti by people not realizing it. I'll just give you strategies which it throws out. And it will be really good if you are able to roll it up for the viewers here, right? So the question was exactly this, okay? how to propagate Carnatic music without bhakti. The most important factor here is by people not realizing it, because that is the modus operandi in which it happens. Honestly, it gives a set of strategies which actually seem like a toolkit that has been followed in the last 10 or 15 years by certain people. I'll start with this, okay? Organizational strategies. Okay, I'm not going into the details. I'm giving you the super heads. Under organizational strategies, establish secular institutions. Second, collaborate with diverse artists. Three, develop educational programs. Okay, the second head, performance and presentation. Look at this, concerts in secular place, instrumental focus, vocal performances with secular themes. Now, marketing and outreach. Under this, emphasize cultural heritage without emphasizing its devotional aspects. Okay? Number two, use inclusive language, focusing on universal themes, emotions, and experiences, and not bhakti. Three, social media and digital platforms, leverage it to showcase music's beauty, complexity, and emotional resonance. Doesn't it seem like an exact toolkit which has been followed? And finally, you have community engagement, workshops and master classes, focusing on technical skills and musical appreciation. Number two, lecture demonstration, exploring Carnatic music history, theory, and cultural context. Last, community outreach program to diverse communities, promoting appreciation and understanding. Tell me, of these four superheads and three subheads, 12, don't you think this is a perfect toolkit that has been like to the T followed in the last 10 or 12 years? Now, which basically means your AA space has enough information for people to have actually looked for this. I mean, unless otherwise they have been searches on this, how would AA throw this out? Right? So there's been a constant inquiry on how to actually have this happen without people realizing it. So that is the most devious part of it, and that is the most strategic part of the entire operation. So this is something which we all have to be extremely careful about. I mean, even those, those Rasikas who says that, I don't think that there is any agenda behind it. There is no ideology behind it. I mean, this is hard to separate. I enjoy, please, you're all so rational that you're able to separate the art from the artist, right? Please go to your chat GPT, ask the same question, see the response that you get, and still, if you say that there is no agenda, I have nothing more to say.
Thank you very much. I mean, on that note, I think there cannot much be said because everybody is intellect here, and those who want to stick to their propaganda would anyway be sticking to it. But given the fact that it has penetrated even to the AI level, supervised or unsupervised, it speaks a lot on the ecosystem and the kind of narrative which is consciously being built to decimate some of the traditional art forms which have been a medium of elevating their consciousness and not just as a weapon to thrust certain narrative down the throat of the citizens.